if you don't identify with certain actions, you don't get the outcome of the actions you don't do. And so while it's a big mental kind of thing I'm talking through, really what I'm saying is we all show up as somebody. That person we show up as creates our life. You want a better life? Elevate that person.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if you're enjoying the show and getting some great feedback, great information for your investing goals, make sure you leave us an honest review so we can hear from you. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. You are in store for a great show today. We've got a special guest, Mr. Anthony Trucks. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, Anthony Trucks is a former foster child, NFL football player, competitor on American Ninja Warrior, best-selling author, and identity shift coach. From foster care to the NFL to successful business owner, Anthony Trucks has accomplished what statistics will say is impossible. Now, he is the founder of Dark Work and the creator of the Dark Work Experience. Anthony teaches people how to access the power of their identity through dark work to tap into their full potential and make shift happen. Let's welcome to the show, Anthony Trucks.
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Anthony, it's great to have you on the show today. I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
All right, 2 minutes. So we'll call the Reader's Digest version. I was a kid. Had a whole lot of craziness as a kid growing up in foster care. I was in the system for 11 years, adopted at 14 into an all-white family. So didn't really know who I was or where I fit in. Identity was a big question for me. And then never really like a good push from there. It eventually landed in this thing where I had this goal of being great at something, which was football, but realized I sucked at football. Had to make a choice, get good or fall away. And thankfully, I leaned into the difficulty of getting good. Eventually got great at the game, got a college scholarship, went to college, University of Oregon, played football. Eventually, I had a son at 20 years old, which I don't recommend. Married my high school sweetheart 2 years after that, my senior year, into the NFL, played for the Bucks, Redskins, and Steelers, tore my shoulder, came home. My life fell apart and I had to rebuild it. So I was at one point married, 3 kids, and then got divorced, living by myself in a 500 square foot studio apartment, and found that I'm either the creator or the allower of difficulty. I find that we're the common denominators in all of our problems. That was me. So I reshaped myself. I shifted my identity through a lot of difficult stuff I call dark work. And I emerged into a man that's able to come to the world and say, I remarried my ex-wife, I have an amazing family, I have an amazing business, I get to serve great people, and I get to come on shows like this and talk to people like you know.
Anthony, phenomenal, man. I mean, for that Reader's Digest version, you really captured it. I'm going to play back some of what I heard you say, right? You grew up in foster care, had identity challenges as a child, really trying to figure out where you fit in, found
Mhm.
football, realized you weren't that good at it, decided to get good, went on to an NFL career, came home, had some challenges with your wife. And you said something I really, we're going to dive into more, but you said, you're either the creator or the allower of the challenges that you face. So we're going to definitely come back to that. And you talked about kind of doing that dark work that allowed you to kind of come out and get more control over your future. You kind of, I only gave you 2 minutes, so I know why, but you went very briefly over the childhood stuff. I was on your Instagram page really just in preparation for our conversation. And good Lord, man, you've got some videos and the stories you share. And I advise people to go check you out on Instagram because you go into great detail about your experiences there. I mean, just experiences that were really surprising me. And I grew up where my parents had foster children. So the things that I read in there was just alarming to me. Just to give people a little bit of context on some of your background and some of the challenges, can you just share a little bit more about your experiences?
Yeah, man, for going back to those days there. So when you go to the foster care system back in 1986 when it was going on, there was no social media. Nobody knew what was going on. And so also a lot of foster kids, our goal is if I can be bad, then the family will get tired of me and give me back to my house. That's our unsound logic. And so I found myself doing a lot of crazy things, but also had a lot of crazy families. I had families that would put me in chicken coops and make me chase chickens to earn meals. If I didn't and I took food, I'd get beat. I get put in shopping carts and pushed down hills towards traffic. I was forced to lick neighborhood kids' shoes. Like a lot of crazy things took place. And so by 6 years old, I was really shut down, unhappy, emotionally, like just scarred kid. It's like my experience of foster care was not very good, which is, if you extrapolate it out, the reason why 75% of inmates in prisons in America are former foster kids like me. I think there's some part of the world that we have this desire for retribution for because of the hardships we experienced by the hands of just people who were supposed to take care of us but didn't. And so we end up finding ourselves in positions that are just let me do something to get my get back on the world. And so we end up getting caught and go to jail. And so it's just a lot of weird things that happen as a kid that really for a lot of folks they're going, man, I haven't experienced that. How do I connect to it? Imagine yourself in a position where you don't feel like you matter. Not only that, you're being taken advantage of, and you feel incredibly helpless and small. I'm not saying that this was the exact experience, and maybe it didn't happen until you're in the 20s, right? But we can all connect to the emotion of that. I just simply experienced that emotion much earlier than most.
Yeah, man, I think that's very powerful. And I think it helps us understand kind of where you're coming from, but also, when you talk about the transformation you went through and more, for the audience, is how do we kind of put in that work to identify how to make a better future for ourselves? And you went through that, going into the NFL, coming out of the NFL, figuring out where you wanted to go next. What was that experience like for you? You call it the dark work, but talk to us more about that.
It's usually you do these things and way I could say it happens two ways, which is the moments we're talking about are the ones that shape us. So I'm going to lead this out there for the rest of the conversation. I believe that all of us have these adjustments and shifts to who we are based on experiences. It's not a desire, it's not a hope, it's not a conversation. It's what we experience because it wires us neurologically and psychologically. That actual thing you go through, it wires you different for optimism, for pessimism, for joy, for negativity, for whatever. And so those things happen one of two ways. On demand, I choose it, or when crap hits the fan, I didn't choose it. I'm subjected to it. And for me, a lot of my life, which is a lot of all of our lives, I was thrust into it as a foster kid, thrust into it in college, thrust into some things as being a young father. In the NFL, like thrust into this world I don't know about. When I lost my career to an injury, thrust into this world. So crap at the fan a lot for me. And what happens is we choose in those moments to either stay in those places, and we think it's not a choice. We go, it's because this happened or that. No, it's a choice to not see it as a choice. And so at certain points, I just go, I'm tired of this. I want more. I want better. I want to be better. And so I would lean into doing things that felt completely out of alignment with my current identity. I wasn't wired to do these things. But the more I did them, the better results I got. That experience wired me differently for optimism, possibility, hope, capability. And those things I did created my life. Now I'm saying the language of identity, and I want people to get an understanding of it just as a definition to work with is I believe it's who you are when you're not thinking about who you are. It's how you function. And I don't think you can attain or sustain a life above your current identity. If you don't identify with certain actions, you don't get the outcome of the actions you don't do. And so while this is a big mental kind of thing I'm talking through, really what I'm saying is we all show up as somebody. That person we show up as creates our life. You want a better life? Elevate that person.
Man, you just gave some great information there, right? You talked about two things that just jumped out to me and I wrote notes on. You said, when life happens to us, right? When crap hits the fan, we may not feel like we have a choice when we're thrust into that moment, but it's a choice to feel like you don't have a choice. That's really powerful right there. And I think the second thing you said is identity is who you are when you're not thinking about who you are. Let's dig in more than that because I think that helps to frame up some of the things. And, for our listeners, many of them are real estate investors, whether they're
Mhm.
starting out, whether they have a portfolio, but we all get into it for the same reason, right? We want to get some passive income. We want financial freedom. We
Yep.
want to have more time with our family. Maybe we want to leave our W-2 jobs. The market has changed, and right now we're seeing it, being harder and harder to find deals, to do deals. Some people have deals that are not working out right now, and it may feel like we don't have a lot of power, a lot of control on the market.
Mhm.
How would you talk to us about maybe getting more of that power, maybe changing our identity a little bit there?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say change. I would say shift because
Okay.
it's a small
Okay.
thing. It's the small things that go a long way. To be quite honest, it's like a lot of
Okay.
people go. what should you do to make a change? Don't go big. What do you mean? Well, because if you go big, you're gonna fall, you stumble, you don't do it again. If you go small, you build into it, you go big in the long run. So big thing is that there's also this part of us that when we are looking at the brain does not actually like change. The brain it's built to adapt, but it doesn't like nuance. That's why we are afraid of things we don't understand. It's different, right? So the idea is like we're not talking about change, we're talking about adapting to this a new situation. But here's a language point that I got from this guy named Gay Hendricks, and it says, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And what we don't realize sometimes is the world changing around us is normal. If we don't let our brain do what it needs to do to adapt to it, we create excuses to stay in the place we are. And it allows us to go, you know what, I can sleep well at night. It's not my fault. This changed and that changed and that changed. Okay, let's say that in your house, all of a sudden, the change goes from there's no fire in the house to there's fire in the house. Are you going to get out of the house? Right? Yeah. You're not going to go, I had no control of the fire, so I had to burn up. No, you change what's going, you move. And so people need to get to the point of going, look, I'm in this situation. I understand that it's not, but I'm not going to create this mental limitation and go, I'm going to accept that. So whatever's going on, I get to a point of going, look, I may not like what's going on, but at the end of the day, I'm going to control what I do in response to it. Because if I make no response to go beyond this, there's a guarantee I never have success. But if I try, there's a chance. And so in the world of what you're talking to, where the market's changed, things are going crazy. When people go, well, I have no control, you have now created a limitation and you will stay there. I mean, I don't have any solution for you. If you do nothing to get out of it, you in fact will battle for that. You'll fight and argue for you staying a stick in the mud. It's weird to watch people do it sometimes. They will argue and I go, no, this is possible. Yeah, but it'll be too hard. How can you guarantee? I can't guarantee. Only thing I can guarantee is if you sit there, you stay there. And so having the ability to step up and go, it's going to be hard. I'm not going to know what to do. It's going to take me developing a new muscle or a new identity trait I don't currently have, but I'm human. I can do these things. If somebody else says I can, that gives you a little bit of just this mental, hopefully, hope to go, I can move forward. I'm not going to have the perfect path laid out, but I'm going to move forward. One time, this guy gave me a cool metaphor, and all the things I'm talking to, it looks like a scary forest I got to walk through. And you go, look, I can't see all the way through the forest. I don't know what it looks like. I have no guarantee. And I go, it's okay. You can still get going. You got a flashlight. It looks 10 feet in front of you. So I go, well, how do you get through the forest if you don't only see 10 feet in front of you? What if you just, as you take one step, the light goes one more foot in? Take one step, the light goes in. And so little by little, you take these steps and you realize that all you need is that 10 feet and you can make a decision there. No, you can't see all the way through the forest. But if you just take it one step at a time and the light goes farther, you get to take the steps that'll get you through eventually. That's kind of how it feels when you step into the unknown of tasks that you don't do, conversations you don't have, things you don't invest in, like whatever it might be. You go, I'm going to take it one step at a time. And here's the cool part. Every human on earth has already done this. Every person listening has already done it. They only did it when crap hit the fan, though. That's the biggest issue is things went sideways. They go, I'm going to step into this. And so they step in. And so we've already done it. Now just do it intentionally. Face that fear with courage.
You talk about the dark work, the platform you've kind of created to help people. We've talked a little about your background and experiences, but as you've connected with so many folks, what we were talking before we record, right? From, farmers to sales professionals to engineers. I mean, there are a lot of different people, but the issues many of us face are similar, right? Psychological issues. How did you come to, develop kind of the dark work and kind of create this platform for the dark work experience?
It was accidental. So the development of the brand came, it was actually through a conversation that I didn't expect to have, but I've always been an identity person. It's been a conversation that I've talked through because I feel like that is the thing beyond all. If you think like you mentioned mindset's interesting because it's a part of a person's identity. Like you would look at someone and go, they have a great mindset, but they also identify as more and part of who they are encapsulate these tests that give them a good mindset. And honestly, some of the best people that we look at in the world that we're, enamored by, they wouldn't even sometimes mention their mindset. It's just how they think. It's how they think of the Kobe's and the Tom Brady's of the world we all know. I don't know if I've watched a lot of video where they talk about like my mindset was this. It wasn't. We just described the things they laid out as their mindset. So Kobe says, I made a contract. I'm not negotiating with my contract with myself. If I got to get up at 4, I'm getting up at 4. He doesn't say my mindset told me to get up at 4. No, we say great mindset. And so identity is this thing that encapsulates all of it. And so the more I had these discussions about it, I realized nobody woke up today and goes, I want to make an identity shift. It's not this sexy language point. It's a lot of words. So I go, well, what is the thing that we all can attach to? And I used to have this conversation from stage, which I still do, about where I would go from this window of not being good at football to eventually being great. And it wasn't an accident. I had this window of time of 7 months where I went to the dark. Nobody saw, no one celebrated. In fact, people ridiculed me. They made fun of me. I was ostracized. It was this thing where like, and even I didn't feel comfortable doing these things. But month one went by, month two went by. After 7 months of doing this, I emerged a different human. Part of it was I had these new skill sets and a stronger body. But the bigger piece was I had an internal sense of self and a different mentality, different identity. I call it dominator's identity that I had a mindset of at the time. I've done too much work in the dark to lose in the light. It was a guttural ownership that I had earned from the reps that I took that nobody saw. And so I realized that guy that started that dark work experience and the guy that exited are two different guys. The way I processed, the way I thought, how I saw situations, it was I would actually frown upon the way that guy used to think. And that's when I realized like I'm a different dude in a good way. And so for me, like there was an understanding of like that being a capability for all humans. And when I progress it through to this experience I create for people and walk them through, what I'm really saying is like, hey, you have already done some of this stuff. We just kind of did it, I don't know, haphazardly, not intentionally, not structured. We just kind of went through and survived it and come out and go, God, I can do things, right? And I go, how about for the first time in your life, maybe we intentionally create who you want to become? Because all of us read a bunch of books on habits. You got Atomic Habits and Tiny Habits and High Performance Habits and Millionaire Success Habits, all these habits books. But no one really goes to a depth, which a couple of the books allude to, which is you're doing it to create a new identity, to go from I don't smoke to I'm not a smoker. And the thing is, most of us will grab and absorb all these different habits, but never think about who does that habit create for me in the long run. So what my work does is I go, let's cast this out and say, who do you want to be? Work backwards and then select your habits and start building them in intentionally with the reality and understanding of I'm not just doing it to have, I don't want to be, I'm going to be really good at getting into a cold plunge in the morning like people talk about. It's not about that. It's about having this identity that goes, I'm the kind of person that does hard things even when I don't want to do them. So when a hard thing shows up, you can lean on me. It's an identity trait you're developing. It's not just the fact that you can get in cold water. And so the reality is that's what we're seeking at the backside, not even from a conscious standpoint. You want to instinctually, I mentioned earlier, who you are when you're not thinking about who you are, right? You want to be able to enter those defining moments of your life, the hard conversations, the contract issues, like those little things. You want to enter those with a different, like instinctual sense of how you flow to where all of a sudden you exit that space and people go, what happened in there? You were an animal. Like, what, this wasn't who you were. How'd you get to this point? A year ago, you would be like, would lay down and you just look at them and go, I don't know. It's just who I am. Like, it's, like you've been conditioned at this level. That's the thing we're seeking. A lot of us are seeking that sense of internal control and power that dominates identity. And we just have to develop it in the background.
Anthony, man, my mind was just flowing as you were talking. I was affirming some thoughts I had. I was thinking about my son. I'm thinking about a lot of what you're saying. And there are a couple things. One is that dark work you talked about for you, it was being a better football player,
Yeah.
putting in the work for 7 months. And the quote you said, which I love, you said, you put in too much work in the dark not to shine in the light. And, that confidence, it comes from preparation. You've got to put in the work. It's just that simple. You've got to put in the work. And that's part of it. And I think the other part that really jumped out to me is you talked about it's easy for us to look at the habits, and I'm a big fan of Atomic Habits by James Clear. But the part that people don't always capture as clearly is the identity part. It's not that you want to be, you want to eat right and you want to go to the gym. It's that you want to be you want to be fit. You want to be a fit person. You don't eat that. I'm a vegetarian or whatever it is. It's a lifestyle. It's an identity that you have created for yourself that you really want to embrace. And that is an identity shift for a lot of people. And it's not about doing a habit for a period of time. It's about truly shifting who you are. Like you're a healthy eater. Like you eat healthy by choice, not just because you're in a diet for the next 3 months or because it's New Year's or because it's Lent or whatever else, right? And
Yeah.
making that identity shift is something that can stick. I'm also thinking about our listeners and specifically into multifamily investing. And I'm thinking about a conversation I had with one of my mentors on stage, and I was interviewing him, and he was sharing about a deal that just went terribly wrong. I mean, you think of everything bad that can go on a deal. I mean, it was happening to him, and while he was in the midst of essentially losing his deal, it was a 168 unit deal that he was going to lose, and he was going to lose his investors' money.
Mhm.
He ended up doing another deal. And I asked him, I said, man, how did you do that? Like, you had the confidence, you had the ability to go out there and do another deal while you knew this first deal was completely collapsing. And he talked about the challenges he faced. And over time, the one thing that helped him was he had a mantra he said to himself, and he would write down his affirmations. And one of them was that he was a billionaire real estate investor, even though he was not already a billionaire real estate investor.
Mhm.
And I pushed him and we went back and forth on that. And the thing that really crystallized to me is while he wasn't a billionaire real estate investor, that was the identity he was claiming. And
Mhm.
he positioned it to say, well, what would a billionaire real estate investor do in this situation?
Perfect.
You don't give up because you had one deal go sour. You go
Yeah.
do another deal. And that for me really helped me understand, this notion of creating this identity of who you want to be, as opposed to just looking at what the current facts and maybe the current track record is
Yep.
indicating to you. Can you talk a little bit more about that aspect of creating
Oh
that
yeah.
identity and making sure that we can really believe in it? Because I think the challenge for people is like, okay, I can say I want to be a fit person or hey, I want to be a billionaire real estate investor. I want to do this. But if I'm not there today and I don't have, anything in my path that I can look back and say, oh, well, I just did this $10 million deal. So of course I could do another, $20 million deal. When they don't
Mhm.
have that experience to rely on, it becomes very challenging for a lot of people. Can you just elaborate a little bit
Yeah.
more on that?
The framing's difficult, right? It's the imposter syndrome. It's going, I'm not that, so why would I do the thing or say that, right? It's really the battle for a lot of people in all walks of life. And you are 100% correct. The interesting thing is there is somebody who is 10 steps behind us that sees us as that billionaire. And so we are already at a certain level that the billionaire got to, right? So with the separation, it really just is, it's what you just kind of alluded to in a beautiful way, which is an example of it by story, is it's the small things you do that lead to it. It's really, it's a built thing. It's not a one quick hit. It's not all of a sudden a thing happens. And I love what he did. I actually tell people to ask this question: if my hero followed me around for a day, what would they say? And this is a genuine thing because a lot of us, we look at these people and go, I want to be like that. I want to have that. I want to attain that. I go, great. If that person who had that showed up to your house and they just watched you and you didn't change anything, would they at the end of the day go, well done, you're working? Or would they go, what did you just do today? And it's a genuine moment. And so what you have to ask yourself, what he's already doing is, what would that person do? Now, a lot of us, we don't even know this. Actually, I didn't realize I did. I've researched some studies on this. A lot of us will say, what would my best version of me do? And there's a study done by UCLA, and it's called The Stranger Inside. And what they did is they hooked a bunch of diodes up to people's brains. They had them, measuring the scans, and they would ask them questions about people they loved. And they go, hey, tell us about this person. They'd show a person they know. They say, tell us about this person, a person they know. Love would shoot up. Love would shoot up. Then they go, tell us about this person. A stranger's picture would show up, and love, would shoot down. I don't have a connection there. Then they said, tell me about your future self. And stranger would light up in the brain. They don't know this person. If you don't have this connection, you won't sacrifice for that human. So you actually don't really know future self or have a connection there. It's a very interesting thing. How do I use that language? Well, I actually found that what they would do is they would do this thing called face your future with a bank, and they had them think about that future person. But what if it's not a future you when you connect with it? What if it's somebody you already know? For example, we probably both know of a person that exists named The Rock, right? The Rock gets up, he lifts weights, he does his thing, 4 in the morning, rock clock, right? Now, in situations, if I was to sit there and go, would The Rock get his workout in? You know the answer. I don't got to go guessing. I know the answer. If I want to be in line with that identity or that level of life, I know the answer. Now I have to go do the thing. And there's usually that tension in between that goes, but I don't do it. Cool. I know you don't, but guess what? If you did it every day for the next year, you do that now. Like that's the thing. So what your friend did is he had his rock in front of him, was a guy that's a billionaire. The person's a billionaire investor. And he could ask himself, what would this person do in this situation? What would that identity execute on? And he knows it. So even in facing this fear or apprehension of what it is, he knows if he wants to have what that person has, he must be like that person, which means I must do like that person. So he does that thing. This is the same formula for every human being out there. If anybody wants to have that next thing go, great. Who's the kind of person that has that? Again, you can't attain or sustain a dream or life above your current identity. Who identifies with the things that does that? Cool, I got that person in my daily life. I can ask myself, what would they do? And you'll get an answer because you already know. Now go do that thing, no matter how difficult, uncomfortable it feels. That is your dark work.
Man, I love that. You gave some great examples there. I am a big fan of The Rock, and it's funny because that example is one that helps me get out of bed sometimes. You know, when you see this guy posting at 2:30 in the morning after shooting all day, and he's like, "Oh, got to go to the gym and just finish my work."
Amen.
I'm like, "Dude, it's 2:30 in the morning Hawaii time," you know, and he's getting his workout in, and it just shows that dedication, right? And it goes back to, a lot of people make excuses. And sometimes they may feel comforting and valid. Oh, it's too late to go. But the truth of the matter is we've got to figure out how to overcome those things. I love what you said too about, if your hero followed you around, what would they say at the end of the day? I think
Mhm.
that's a great, vivid way for us to picture it, right? We have our mentors, we have our heroes, we have this version of ourselves we want to create. Are we putting in that work? Are we doing the things we need to be doing to move forward? And again, if there's some tactical things where you don't know where to adjust your time or your schedule, that's one thing. But are you actually putting in the work? That's a big thing that I think people need to focus on. The other
Yeah.
thing you said that jumped out to me was when you were talking about the identity, when thinking about who we want to be, that stranger aspect. If we don't have a connection to the future version of ourselves, we don't we're not willing to sacrifice. When you hear most people when they talk about their motivation, they usually say stuff like my kids, right? I'm doing this for my
Yeah.
kids. I want to be a better parent. I want to, I'm doing all this for my kids because they can see that, but they can't see themselves in the future. Just can you talk a little bit more about maybe some either strategies or tactics to help drive a better connection with the future version of ourselves we want to become?
Yeah, there's actually an app years ago that would like it would recreate an aged version of yourself. So a company, I think it was might have been Charles Schwab, but they did as the investment company. People would invest a certain amount into their future. They found that if they had somebody see a picture of themselves age, that they could connect to that person, they would actually invest at 40% more than they ever had before. And so partially it's one way of it. But what I actually do is I don't try to, it's weird. I don't try to think of that person. I try to identify with what I want because here's the thing, it's hard to create desire in humans. A guy named Eugene Schwartz is a great marketing mind. And he says, our job is never to create desire. If you create desire for somebody, you drop the ball completely. You can't sell anything to them. So what you do is go, what's the desire? And then how do I make sure my thing gets you to that desire faster? So people, for example, they'll buy an iPhone before they buy new tires in the winter. The new iPhone came out. I desire the iPhone. I'm getting that, even though I may slip off into a ditch while looking at it in my car. So the idea is, how do we get in the line of what this person desires? And we can unpack that. People may desire a nicer house, a nicer car. Maybe they want a better relationship, a better body. So we now know what their desire is. I don't have to go to your desire and go, let me change that. I can anchor to that and go, great. Here's how we get you there. And what we do is we look at the different tasks and traits and things that you have to develop to get there. And you look at those and go, all right, while I do not want to do them, I want what comes of me doing them. And we get you in motion. And here's what's interesting about this. The brain, I heard it recently from Jordan Peterson. The brain actually can understand and know when it's closing the gap between what it wants and where it's at. And it gets a dopamine dump. So that hard thing you're doing that you don't want to do, but you're doing because you want, when you get started, every day you do something, you get a little dopamine dump and it feels good to do it. And eventually it goes from like this, I give it a scale. Let's say it's 10 out of 10 of discomfort. At first, like a 10, like, I don't know why I'm doing this, right? Then you do it again, you go, okay, well, I learned something, it's a nine, and you keep going, and eventually it's an eight, and it's a seven. Like you get these little dopamine dumps, like it's not as bad, and it gets to zero. And people go, oh, it's just, it's painless. No, it's joy. That thing you
Mm.
used to dislike doing, but you feel amazing when you do it. Like think about people that are out of shape, all of a sudden start working out. The first workout they want to puke, they're like, I effing hate this. I don't want to work out. And then after a good chunk of time doing it, They can't get through a day without getting a workout. They're addicted to it, right? Imagine if the thing that's standing in your way of having the results you want wasn't a problem for you anymore. You didn't have discomfort, but in fact, you had this, you couldn't wait to do it when you get up in the morning. When you're operating at that tick, the life you want is just yours now. Like it just happens. And that's where a lot of folks don't grasp is in the beginning, it's hard to do. At the end, it's hard not to do. When you get to that level of life, it's just what you do. And then people look at you go, how in the world did you close all those deals? I don't know. It was just Tuesday afternoon. It's normalcy to you now. And that's the space. When your identity is as operating like that, it will actually feel emotionally less stressful than it does now, while at the same time outputting 10 times what it is.
Man, I love it. You keep dropping gems, and for whatever reason, my youngest son, is on my mind as I'm listening to you speak. And part of it is we just wrapped wrestling season, and he wrestled his first year last year. He's only 7, but he struggled a lot last year, and we worked in the off season. And I mean, there were days he did not want to wrestle. He didn't want to go to practice. I mean, he was faking injuries. He was in
Yeah.
tears. He was crying, right?
Yeah.
And this past season he placed at every tournament and won a couple tournaments as well.
Right.
And he loves practice, loves training, loves wrestling.
Nice.
And as you were talking, what I realized is it was that switch, right? When you start something new, you're not very good at it. You're going to suck. You may not want to continue to do it, but eventually you get a little better at it. You get a little bit more of the results you're looking for. And then it's not that it gets easy, you just enjoy it more. And I think he's at that point where he's actually enjoying it now. I mean, it's all season, he still wants to wrestle. And I think
Yeah.
that's great. And a trait that, for us as I know you got your kids, I've got my kids. It's something that we try to put in our kids now is like, hey, there are things that are going to be tough. I want them to have that mental toughness and that identity for themselves where they're resilient and they can overcome these things. And I
Hmm.
know for me, that's one of the things that I'm pushing on my kids is trying to build resilient, tough young people so that
Heck
they
yeah.
can have a great, version of themselves going into work, whatever that looks like.
I'm
Can
with
you
it.
talk
Yeah.
to me about that from your standpoint as well? Because again, as a former NFL athlete, I know, youth sports is all the rage right now and all that, but talk to me about kind of how you take some of these concepts and put it into little people.
Yeah, man. Well, I got a son that's he's 19, he's in college now. He's a sophomore year of college running track at University of Oregon. I got twins that are 14. They both run track. My youngest son, actually, I got a daughter and a son. My youngest son, who's in the same twin realm, he's also a football player along with track. And so the big thing, my oldest son, he was a little battle. He's not the most like ferocious, aggressive human, but I used to force him to do uncomfortable things, and people would probably borderline think it's torture. Here's an example. He is a guy that was quiet and shy, and I go, you being quiet and shy is not going to be the best thing for our world for you. The way your mom and I operate and function, like he wouldn't, I couldn't get him to go, like we're in line. Hey, could you go up there and ask that person for a pencil? No, I can't. Like he wouldn't do it. I'm like, bro, you have to be able to go do that. So I realized he has this deathly afraid fear of talking to strangers, not from like they're going to kidnap him, but he's too shy. So here's what I did. I got these Jamba Juice gift cards, and he wanted to go to Washington D.C. I go, great. If you're gonna go to Washington D.C., you're gonna sell these Jamba Juice gift cards to strangers door to door. I'm talking fear shot through his entire cell, every cell of his body. And he's like, no. And I go, yeah. And so like I was like, you're gonna have to go outside and do it. So I against his will, I physically picked my son up and walked him outside in his basketball shorts, and I threw his shoes, his pants, and his t-shirt, like a little collar shirt outside with Jamba Juice gift cards. There's 20 of them there. I go, you need to sell all of these by the end of the day, or you will sleep in the backyard with the dogs. 100%. I was dead serious, just, like I would have 1,000% made him do this. He's, I think at the time about 12, 13, because it's middle school. And so he's like, no. And I go, just go do it. And he's like crying now. And I lock the door. And then an hour goes by and I go, I haven't heard from him. So I go outside to see where he's at and I can't find him. I'm like, did he just go do it? And so I walked to front of the property and sure enough, he's on the side of the house in front of the gate crying with his clothes on, just sitting there crying. And as opposed to being patient and soft like a mom would, I go, mother, get up. And I drug him to the sidewalk. And I said, you better get going. I said, go to that door now. If you aren't at that door in the next 2 minutes, guaranteed sleeping. And he took off, right? And I don't know what he did at that door, but then like they closed the door. Anyways, an hour and a half goes by. The kid comes in the door beaming. Dad, I sold 19 cards. Like the look on his face, night and day. he had built this confidence by doing this hard, scary thing. He's like, got a handful of money. There's one card left. And I go, yeah, you got one more, bro. Like, you got one more to do. He sold it to grandma, which was fine. But the reality is I didn't do it because I needed the money. I didn't care about the money. It was a non-issue, right? I didn't do it because I just wanted to like torture the kid. I did it because I needed him to be subjected to his own dark work experience that he was rewired through, where he had a different sense of where it was fear before he goes, I can do this. And now, like he's in college, he's like the guy. He's the life of the party to an extent. Like he's a very good, well-rounded, amazing, respected human. Like I'll be on the phone with him and he's walking and he's just FaceTime and he'll do things. The other day, my wife and I were just FaceTiming and he's walking through like some hall and he goes, hey, sir, I just want to let you know you dropped that. Like he's outgoing and he'll talk and he's gracious and nice. And I called, look what we did, you know? And it wasn't easy. It was very hard for him. And he actually, funny thing, he came back last winter and he goes, Dad, I think you should have been harder on me. Like, think about that. This is the guy who gets. So when I think of that, I've done things with my youngest son. One time he wasn't putting his full effort into a sport that he was playing. And like when you watch, you know. And I go, look, you have a week to figure this out. We're going to sleep on the floor for a month. A little thin pad. There's no bed, one blanket, you're on the floor. He didn't figure it out. He slept on the floor for a month. My wife hated it because she didn't want my baby, right? But eventually figured it out and he didn't sleep on the floor again. And so it sounds like these things are like intentional, but here's what I realized. My hardship was actual beatings and starvation and torture. My hardship that I guess conditioned me to lean into things that hardened me against certain situations. Those were heinous, man. Those were difficult. My kids don't have those. And I think one of the biggest issues with parents is they rob their kids of the hardships they need to be successful in the world after they're gone. And so for me, I realized I have to curate that for them. I have to find ways to, in a safe environment, right, in a non-dangerous environment, create difficulty for them to experience so they can build those muscles so they can be as successful as me or beyond what I was. And even in a different way. I don't care. My kid, he said to youth sports. I don't even know my kids' fastest times. I don't know their best games. It sounds weird. I go to every single one of them. All I care about is the effort they give. The game for me is a microcosm of the world. It will end. It ended for me. I realize that if done properly, you will garner so many intangible skill sets from sports. And it doesn't be sport, it could be band, it could be piano. But if you put yourself in these situations, when you exit later, life is easier. It just is. And when I look at people that are adults that are falling apart, I usually find if I talk to them long enough, they had an amazing childhood. It was easy. Parents loved me and it was all great and there was no problems until I was 22 years old. My first relationship fell apart or I lost my first job and it's all downhill. And it's like, dang, okay, I get it. You didn't have the hardships. And I love this quote. I got a tattoo on my arm. I got a picture of my studio over here. And I'll end on this for this conversational point. And it says, smooth seas never made skilled sailors. So really what I'm doing is trying to give my kids some rocky and bumpy seas.
I love it, man. Listen, Anthony, I feel like I could just keep talking to you. You just keep giving us great information. And I'm happy to hear how hard you're on your kids, just because I think as parents, when all the other parents start looking at you like you're the crazy one, and at least once you have to look in the mirror and say, am I the crazy one? And what I'm hearing is I can go further, which is great. So, and
Yeah.
it's funny too. Just little quick story is, as you were talking about what you did to your son, I was a very shy kid as well, like ridiculously shy. Like I would not order my own food. As a kid, the one time we got to go to McDonald's, I remember being next to my dad and whispering to him. He's like, "Tell her." I'm like, "Oh, what? Are you crazy? I'm not talking to her." And after about, we had to let other people pass us in line. After about maybe three people, he finally was like, "You tell her you don't eat." I was like, "Okay." So I
Mm,
made my order. We fast forward. I remember my stepmother. I went door to door in hair salons. So she was driving around the city. We had a
yeah.
box of latex gloves, 60 boxes. And I was like 12 or 13. And I had to go into all these beauty salons and sell them. And I sold a whole case of them. And I was again the same little shy kid. And here we are, obviously doing this podcast. So I've learned how to speak to people at some point. But
Mm,
those experiences were vital, right? And overcoming that fear of rejection and the fear of, whatever I felt was going to happen if I talked to somebody. So I think it's really important for us to have that. And you talked about the smooth seas not making skilled sailors, and I think that's just really important. Hey, you got a lot of great information. One, I want to make sure people know where they can find you. One, check out your website, anthonytrucks.com, and then you're
Yeah.
pretty active on Instagram as well. So you
Yep.
can go and follow you there. We'll make sure you put your link to your IG handle there. You have any other speaking events coming up or any other big
Oh
activities?
yeah, man. We're always doing things. I just got this year alone. I've already done six. I got three more coming up in the next, I think, like 4 weeks. It's like usually I don't do more than 24 per year because I like to be home. I'm in season of dad. I call it. I want to be present as a father. We've got nine in the first quarter already. So I'm like, we got to slow this down a little bit. But yeah, well, I think I have Houston coming up, Napa coming up, Orlando coming up. I might have one in a different country. I think I got London coming up in, I want to say it's June. Like yeah, they just keep coming. I can't remember all of them, but yep, I'm out there doing my thing, man.
Highly sought after speaker. Make sure you check out Anthony Trucks. Right now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
My marriage fell apart, man. I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good father, and then it all fell apart. And it took me 3 years to figure out that I was the guy that needed to work on it, and I rebuilt that. But yeah, that would be the biggest, best one of my life.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Oh man, the calendar. And the thing is, it's not just the calendar; it's how you use the calendar. Most people get burnt out or overwhelmed, but they got lots to over. I promise you, the solution is running your calendar properly.
All right. Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Identity Shift by Anthony Trucks.
There you go. We'll definitely make sure we link to that one in the show notes. Hey, what's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
Oh man, I spend the mornings doing me. I have a morning routine. It changes based on what I can do or my time frame, but I never start the day under the rest of the world's control. I like to get myself going in my own control to where I can end the day in my own emotional space.
What's your number one insight for making an identity shift?
Ooh, easy. Do the work in the dark so you can win in the light.
I love it. Well, Anthony, let's lighten the mood. You're still out there on the West Coast, right?
I am, yeah, that's home.
All right. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Oh, this is interesting. It's not going to be in California. It's in a place in Oregon called Hawaiian Time. I don't know what it is. It's if God said you get one meal for eternity, it'd be a number six elite from Hawaiian Time.
All right. We'll make sure we link to that in the show notes. Obviously, you had that one ready to go, so it must be delicious.
Yeah, dude, that's the one.
Anthony, great information, man. Thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. You gave us a lot of great knowledge and just hearing about your story, your background, and specifically, how life pushed you and thrust you into making different decisions and ultimately shifting your identity, getting more control over who you saw yourself as and how to adjust that, but helping us do the same thing, particularly for those of us who are looking to scale a portfolio, get financial freedom, whether it be through real estate or other aspects of our lives, recognizing that, you either are in control of that situation or you are allowing that situation to be there. We've got more control than we think. And again, it's not that we want to change who we are, but make a shift in our identity. Again, if you want to learn more about Anthony or check him out, follow him on Instagram or go to anthonytrucks.com. Both are going to be linked in our show notes. Anthony, thank you again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you and hope you have a great day.
You too. Thank you.